So my mom ruined my engagement party last Saturday, and I still can't wrap my head around what actually happened. Like, I've replayed it in my mind probably 300 times, and I still don't understand how she thought any of this was okay. I've been with my fiancé Aaron for almost 4 years. We got engaged 2 months ago, and it was genuinely one of the happiest moments of my life. He proposed during a trip we took to visit his grandparents in North Carolina, out on their porch at sunset. And it was simple and perfect and exactly us. I said yes, obviously. We called my parents that night to tell them. My mom's reaction was weird from the start. She said congratulations, but there was this pause before she said it. Like she needed a second to find the word. My dad was thrilled, asked about the ring, wanted to know all about the trip. Mom just kept saying things like, well, that's exciting, and I hope you've thought this through and make sure you're really ready. Which, like, okay, maybe that's normal mom stuff, but it fell off. Here's the thing about my mom and Aaron. She's never been his biggest fan. Nothing he does is ever quite right. When I first brought him home for Thanksgiving 3 years ago, she spent the whole dinner asking about his career plans and whether he was thinking about going back to school, and did he really think his current situation was sustainable. Aaron works in logistics for a distribution company. It's not glamorous, but he's good at it, and he makes decent money, and more importantly, he actually likes what he does. But my mom acts like he's some deadbeat because he doesn't have a fancy title. Meanwhile, my ex, Chris. Oh God, where do I even start with Chris? Chris and I dated for almost 5 years, from when I was 19 to 24. My mom loved Chris, like obsessively loved him. He came from money. His family owns a chain of car dealerships across 3 states. He was always dressed nice and said all the right things to parents. My mom used to tell me constantly how lucky I was to have found someone like him. She'd brag about him to her friends. She kept a photo of us at my cousin's wedding on her mantle for years after we broke up. The thing is, Chris was also a lying, manipulative piece of garbage who cheated on me with at least 2 different women during our relationship and made me feel like I was losing my mind every time I tried to bring up my concerns. I spent the last 1.5 years of that relationship constantly apologizing for being paranoid and jealous when it turned out I was right the entire time. Finding out the truth almost broke me. It took me a long time to trust anyone again. When I finally told my mom the full story of why we broke up, she literally said, well, relationships are complicated and no one's perfect. No one's perfect. Like finding your boyfriend's secret Instagram, where he's DMing other women asking when he can see them again, is just a little oopsie that mature adults work through. She never stopped asking about him. Every few months, she'd casually mention that she ran into his mother at the grocery store, or heard through someone that he was doing well, or did I know he bought a house now? I asked her multiple times to stop bringing him up. She'd apologize and then do it again 3 months later. When I started dating Aaron, she was skeptical from day one. She'd compare everything to Chris. Chris always brought flowers when he came over. Does Aaron not do that? Chris used to take you to nice restaurants. Chris had such good manners. I finally snapped at her about 1 year in and told her she needed to stop comparing my current boyfriend to my cheating ex, or I was going to stop coming around. She cried and said I was being dramatic, and she was just trying to help me see things clearly. Okay, so, the engagement party. Aaron's parents threw us a small party the weekend after we got engaged. It was lovely, low-key, just close family and a few friends. My parents came, and my mom behaved herself mostly. Just made one comment about how the appetizers were store-bought, which, like, who cares? Then my mom insisted she wanted to throw us a proper celebration. A bigger party at her house, invite extended family, make it a real event. I was hesitant, honestly, but Aaron said we should let her do it. That maybe it would help her feel more involved and she'd warm up to him. I love that about him. He always tries to see the best in people even when they don't deserve it. So we agreed. She planned it for 3 weeks out. She was texting me constantly about catering options and decorations and the guest list. I sent her our list of friends we wanted to invite. She added family members. It seemed like it was coming together fine. Saturday arrives. Aaron and I drive over to my parents' house around 4. The party was supposed to start at 5. My sister Jada was already there helping set up. The backyard looked genuinely nice. Mom had rented tables and chairs and hung string lights, and there was a whole spread of food on the long table by the fence. I actually felt grateful for a minute, like maybe she was really trying. People started arriving, my aunts and uncles, some cousins, family friends I hadn't seen in a while. Aaron's brother came with his wife. A few of our actual friends showed up. It was filling up nicely. Aaron was being his usual charming self, making conversation with my relatives he'd only met once or twice, actually remembering details about their lives that I'd told him. My Aunt Doris kept telling me how handsome he was and how happy I looked. Then around 6, I was standing near the food table, talking to my cousin, when I saw someone walk through the side gate, and I literally stopped mid-sentence. It was Chris. Chris was at my engagement party, walking into my parents' backyard like he belonged there, holding a bottle of wine, wearing this blue button-down I actually remember from when we dated. I looked around for my mom and found her already walking toward him with her arms open. She hugged him. She was hugging my ex-boyfriend at my engagement party while my fiancé was 15 feet away talking to my uncle. I walked over immediately. I wasn't even trying to make a scene, I just needed to understand what was happening. I asked her what Chris was doing here and she acted confused, said she'd invited him, that she thought it would be nice for everyone to catch up since we'd all been so close. I told her we were not close. We broke up 5 years ago and she knows exactly why. She waved her hand like I was being silly and said, "Oh, that was ages ago. Everyone's moved on." And Chris had been wanting to reconnect anyway. Chris had been wanting to reconnect, which means she'd been in contact with him. She'd been talking to my ex behind my back. Chris just stood there with this little smile on his face like this was all totally normal. He said, "Hey," told me I looked great, said he was really happy to be here. The absolute audacity of this man standing in my parents' backyard at my engagement party, acting like we're all just old friends. I told him he needed to leave. My mom immediately jumped in saying I was being rude, and Chris drove all the way here, and the least I could do was be civil. I said I wasn't going to be civil to someone who spent years lying to me and I wanted him gone. She started doing that thing where she talks to me like I'm an unreasonable child, telling me I was making a scene and embarrassing her in front of everyone. At this point, Aaron had noticed something was going on and came over. He asked what was happening. I told him my mom invited my ex without telling me. He looked at Chris, then at my mom, then back at me. He asked if I wanted to leave. Before I could answer, my mom said absolutely not. This party was for us and we weren't going anywhere. And Chris was just an old family friend here to wish us well. Aaron told her very calmly that it wasn't appropriate for her to invite my ex to our engagement party without asking. My mom got this tight look on her face and said she didn't realize she needed permission to invite guests to her own home. Aaron said it's not about permission, it's about respect. She said she didn't need a lecture on respect from him. That was when I told Aaron we should go. I was done. I wasn't going to stand there and watch my mother prioritize my ex's feelings over mine at my own engagement party, but we didn't leave fast enough. My mom grabbed a fork and tapped it against her wine glass to get everyone's attention. The whole backyard went quiet. She thanked everyone for coming to celebrate this special occasion. Then she said that as a mother, she had to speak her truth. She said she loved me more than anything and wanted the best for me. She said she'd watched me struggle over the years and make choices she didn't always understand. She said she'd tried to be supportive even when it was hard. And then she said she couldn't stay quiet anymore. She said she didn't think Aaron was right for me. She said she'd always felt that Chris was my true match, that we'd had something special that I threw away. And she believed in her heart that I was making a mistake. She said she'd invited Chris today because she wanted me to see him, really see him, and remember what we had. She said it wasn't too late to choose differently. I cannot describe to you what it felt like to stand there in front of 50 people, while my mother told everyone I should marry my cheating ex instead of my fiancé. There was this moment where nobody made a sound. I could see my Aunt Doris with her mouth literally hanging open. My cousin was staring at the ground. Aaron's brother looked like he wanted to murder someone. Chris had this expression on his face like he was watching something interesting on TV. Not embarrassed, not uncomfortable, just observing. Aaron didn't say anything. He just turned and walked out of the backyard through the side gate. I called after him. He didn't stop. I went after him, obviously. By the time I got to the front of the house, he was already at his car. I was asking him to wait, to talk to me, telling him none of this was my fault. He said he knew it wasn't my fault. He said he just couldn't be there right now. He said he needed to process what just happened and he'd call me later. Then he got in his car and left. When I went back to the backyard, half the guests were already leaving. My dad was standing near the back door with his hands in his pockets, looking like he wished he could disappear. Jada was yelling at my mom, asking her what the hell she was thinking. My mom was crying and saying everyone was overreacting and she was just being honest about her feelings. Chris was still there, still holding that stupid bottle of wine. He walked up to me and said he was sorry things got out of hand. That wasn't how he'd imagined this going. I asked him what exactly he had imagined. He said my mom had reached out to him a few weeks ago and said she wanted to reconnect us, that she thought we'd both grown and maybe it was worth another chance. He said he'd never stopped thinking about me. He said he knew he'd made mistakes, but he was different now. I told him to get out of my face and never contact me or my family again. He looked genuinely surprised, like he really thought after all that I might actually want to talk to him. He shrugged and said, "Okay, her loss," and walked out. I found my mom sitting on one of the rented chairs, crying. She started immediately with "I was just trying to help. I only want you to be happy. Why can't you understand that I know what's best for you?" I told her she had destroyed my engagement party, humiliated me and Aaron in front of everyone, and I needed her to leave me alone. She said I was being ungrateful after everything she'd done. I said what she'd done was betray my trust and ambush me with my ex at my own celebration. She said Aaron would never understand me the way Chris did. She said Chris came from a good family and had real prospects and Aaron was just settling. She said I was going to wake up in 10 years and realize I'd wasted my life with the wrong person. She said she'd been watching me make this mistake for 4 years and she finally had to say something. My dad finally stepped in and told her that was enough. She turned on him and said he never supports her, and this was exactly why I don't listen to her. Because he always takes my side. He said there were no sides, she'd just humiliated their daughter at her engagement party and invited an ex who had hurt me deeply. She said he was overreacting too. Jada drove me home because I was in no state to drive. She kept saying she couldn't believe mom actually did that. That she'd always known mom had a weird thing about Chris, but she never thought she'd take it this far. She said she was so sorry. I just kept checking my phone hoping Aaron would text or call. He didn't that night. I barely slept. The next morning, I finally texted him saying I understood if he needed space, but I wanted him to know I had no idea any of that was going to happen, and I was devastated. He responded a few hours later saying he knew it wasn't my fault, and he wasn't angry at me. He said he needed a few days to think. A few days. After being together almost 4 years, after proposing, after planning a future together, He needed a few days because my mother announced to 50 people that I should marry someone else. My mom has been texting and calling constantly, leaving voicemails saying she's sorry if I'm upset, but she stands by what she said. She thinks eventually I'll see she was right. She keeps saying things like, when you're my age, you'll understand. And I've seen more of life than you have, and a mother always knows. Chris apparently told his mother about what happened, and she called my mom to say how brave she was for speaking up. So now my mom is feeling validated because another delusional person agreed with her. I don't know what to do. Aaron is barely talking to me. My mom won't accept that she did anything wrong. Jada thinks I should cut mom off completely, but I don't know if I can do that. Chris is apparently still out there thinking he has some chance with me. And I keep thinking about the fact that my mother has been talking to my ex behind my back for God knows how long, planning this, coordinating with him. This wasn't spontaneous. She didn't just randomly decide to invite him that day. She reached out to him weeks before. She told him about the party. She told him I might give him another chance. What else has she been telling him over the years? My engagement might be over because my mother decided she gets to choose who I marry. And the worst part is I think she genuinely believes she was doing me a favor. Update. Aaron finally agreed to talk to me 5 days after the party. 5 days of barely any communication. Just short texts saying he was okay and he'd reach out when he was ready. 5 days of me sitting in our apartment surrounded by engagement party gifts we'd brought home from his parents' celebration, staring at this ring on my finger, wondering if I was still engaged or not. 5 days of my mom flooding my phone with messages I couldn't bring myself to answer. He texted me on Thursday afternoon and asked if I could meet him at this park near his brother's place. Not our apartment, not somewhere we usually go together. That scared me, honestly. I got there before him and sat on a bench near the walking path, trying not to spiral. When he showed up, he sat down next to me but left space between us. For a while, neither of us said anything. Then he told me he'd spent the past 5 days replaying that party in his head and trying to figure out what it meant. He said he wasn't angry at me. He knew I didn't plan any of it, but something had shifted for him and he needed me to understand what. He said standing there listening to my mother tell a backyard full of people that I should marry someone else, while the guy she wanted me to marry stood there watching like it was entertainment, was one of the most humiliating moments of his life. He said he'd always known my mom didn't love him, but he thought she at least respected our relationship. He said finding out she'd been secretly talking to my ex and coordinating this whole thing made him realize she doesn't just dislike him, she's actively working against us. I tried to tell him that my mom doesn't speak for me, that her opinion doesn't matter, that I chose him and I would keep choosing him every single day. He said he knew that. He said the problem wasn't whether I loved him. The problem was whether he could spend the rest of his life with someone whose mother would never accept him and would apparently go to extreme lengths to sabotage our relationship. He asked me what I was going to do about her, not in an accusatory way. He genuinely wanted to know what my plan was. Because he said if the answer was nothing, if I was just going to let this blow over and go back to normal family dinners and holiday gatherings where she makes little comments about him while secretly wishing I was with Chris, then he didn't know if he could do that. I told him I didn't know what to do yet. I said I was furious with her. I hadn't spoken to her since the party, but cutting off my mother completely felt huge and permanent, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that. He said he understood. He said he wasn't asking me to cut her off. He was asking me to set actual boundaries and stick to them. He said every time she made a comment about him in the past, I would tell her to stop and she would apologize and then do it again 3 months later. He asked what was going to be different this time. I didn't have an answer, because he was right. I'd never actually enforced any real consequences. I just kept hoping she would change on her own. He told me he loved me. He said he still wanted to marry me, but he said he needed to see that I was willing to protect our relationship even when it was hard. He said he'd watched me let her cross lines over and over because confronting her was uncomfortable, and he was tired of being the one who had to just deal with it while I tried to keep the peace. That hurt to hear. It hurt because it was true. We sat there for another hour talking about everything. How he felt when he first realized my mom didn't like him. How he'd tried so hard to win her over those first couple years, bringing gifts, remembering her birthday, always being polite even when she made snide comments. How eventually he stopped trying because nothing worked and it was exhausting. How he felt like he was always being compared to someone he'd never even met and found lacking. He asked me if I still had feelings for Chris. I told him absolutely not, that Chris was a cheating liar who messed with my head for years and the idea of ever being with him again made me physically ill. He said okay. He said he believed me. But he said he needed to ask because clearly my mother thought there was something there worth salvaging. I told him I had no idea why my mother was so obsessed with Chris. I said I'd never understood it. Even when Chris and I were together and I was miserable and constantly anxious and feeling like I was going crazy, my mom acted like everything was perfect. When I finally told her about the cheating, she basically shrugged it off. It was like she decided Chris was the right person for me, and no amount of evidence to the contrary would change her mind. Aaron asked if she knew all the details of what Chris did. I said yes. I'd told her everything eventually. The Instagram account, the women, the lies. She knew all of it. He just shook his head and said that made it so much worse. Because it meant she was willing to push me back towards someone who had genuinely hurt me. Someone she knew had hurt me. Because she liked his family's money or his manners or whatever else she saw in him. He said that wasn't loving me. That was treating me like a doll she could dress up and arrange however she wanted. We left the park with things still unresolved, but at least we were talking again. He came back to the apartment that night. We didn't really discuss the engagement or wedding planning. We just existed in the same space again, and that felt like progress. The next day, I decided I had to talk to my mom. Not text, not call, face to face. I drove over to my parents' house Saturday morning. My dad's truck wasn't in the driveway, so I knew it would just be her. She opened the door looking surprised to see me and immediately started with, "Oh honey, I'm so glad you came. I've been so worried. You haven't been answering my messages." I walked past her into the living room and told her we needed to talk. She sat down across from me and put on this wounded expression, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. She said she knew I was upset, but she hoped I'd had time to calm down and think about things more clearly. She said she'd only done what she did because she loves me and wants the best for me. I asked her how long she'd been talking to Chris behind my back. She got this look on her face, half defensive, half annoyed, and said it wasn't behind my back. She'd simply stayed in touch with his family over the years, and recently they'd reconnected. I asked her to define recently. She said the past few months. I asked what they talked about. She said just catching up, how his life was going, that sort of thing. I asked if she told him about my engagement. She said of course she mentioned it. I asked what his reaction was. She paused and then said he was surprised, but he'd said some very nice things about always caring about me and wondering how I was doing. I asked her if she told him where the party was and what time to show up. She said she may have mentioned it. I asked if she told him he should come. She said she extended an invitation, yes, because she thought it might be good for us to see each other. Good for us. She thought ambushing me with my cheating ex at my engagement party would be good for me. I told her that Chris cheated on me for years, that he lied to my face constantly, that I spent the last 18 months of our relationship questioning my own sanity because every time I suspected something, he made me feel like I was paranoid and jealous for no reason. I asked her if she remembered any of that. She said yes, she remembered, but she also remembered how happy I'd been with him in the beginning. She said every relationship has rough patches, and what matters is whether you can work through them. I asked her if cheating with multiple women was a rough patch. She said Chris had clearly grown since then, and people deserve second chances. I asked why Chris deserved a second chance, but Aaron didn't deserve a first one. Why she'd spent 4 years making Aaron feel unwelcome and inadequate when he'd never done anything wrong. She got quiet for a second, and then said it wasn't about Aaron doing anything wrong. It was about whether he was right for me. She said Chris comes from a family with resources, with connections, with stability. She said Aaron works at a warehouse. I corrected her that he works in logistics management, which is different, but she just waved her hand like the distinction didn't matter. She said she wanted me to have security. She said she wanted me to have the life she never had. This was the first time she'd said that out loud. The life she never had. My dad is a good man. He's worked the same job for 30 years. He's reliable. He loves my mom. He's never raised his voice at any of us. But they've never had much money. They live in the same small house I grew up in. They've never taken fancy vacations. My mom has always been aware of what other people have that she doesn't. I realized sitting there that this was about what Chris represented. His family's money, their status, the life she imagined I could have if I married into it. She didn't care that he cheated on me because in her mind the trade-off was worth it. Security and status in exchange for fidelity and respect. I asked her if she understood how messed up that was. She said I was oversimplifying things. She said marriage isn't just about love. It's about building a life, and she wanted me to have options. I asked what options. She said Chris could give me things Aaron never could. A big house, nice cars, never having to worry about money. I told her I didn't care about any of that. I told her I'd rather live in a 1-bedroom apartment with Aaron than a mansion with Chris. She said that's because I was young and naive and didn't understand yet how much money matters. I stood up and told her that she owed me and Aaron an apology. A real one. Not an "I'm sorry you're upset," but a genuine acknowledgement that what she did was wrong. She said she would apologize for how things happened, but not for the sentiment behind it. She said she still believed she was right. I asked if she was seriously telling me she would do it all over again. She said if she thought it would help me see reason, then yes. I told her that until she could genuinely apologize and commit to respecting my relationship with Aaron, I didn't want to see her or talk to her. She started crying and asking why I was being so cruel after everything she's done for me. I told her what she'd done for me was humiliate me in front of everyone I know and make my fiancé question whether he could marry into a family that would never accept him. I left. She followed me to the door still talking, saying I couldn't just cut her off, that she was my mother, that we needed to work through this like adults. I told her working through it required her admitting she was wrong, and she'd already said she wasn't going to do that. She said I was putting Aaron before my own family. I said Aaron was my family now, and she needed to accept that, or accept not being part of my life. I got in my car and drove away while she stood in the doorway. When I got home and told Aaron what happened, he seemed relieved that I'd actually confronted her. But then I told him what she'd said about wanting me to have the life she never had and wanting me to have security, and how she basically admitted she was okay with Chris cheating because at least he had money. Aaron just sat there processing. Then he asked me something I wasn't expecting. He asked if part of me agreed with her. If somewhere deep down I wondered whether I was giving up something by choosing him instead of someone with more money. I told him no, absolutely not. I told him he was the best thing that ever happened to me and I didn't give a single damn about Chris's family money. He said okay. He said he believed me. but he said he needed me to understand how hard it was to hear that my own mother thought he wasn't good enough because of his bank account. We talked for a long time that night, about money and class and what we actually wanted our life to look like. He admitted he'd always felt insecure around my mom because he could tell she looked down on him. He said he'd never told me because he didn't want to cause problems between me and her. I wished he had told me sooner. Things felt better between us after that conversation, like we were actually on the same team again instead of me being caught in the middle. But then Sunday happened. My sister Jada called me in the afternoon, said I needed to come over to her place because she had something to tell me. She wouldn't say what over the phone. I drove over thinking something was wrong with her, or maybe our dad. When I got there, she sat me down and said she'd gone to visit our mom that morning to check on her. She said mom had been showing her the text she'd been exchanging with Chris's mother, and that's when Jada saw something that made her really concerned. Apparently, my mom had been planning this for longer than a few months. Jada saw a text from back in January where my mom told Chris's mother that she thought I was going to get engaged soon, and she was dreading it. Chris's mother responded saying maybe there was still time to change things. They'd been discussing me like I was a problem to be solved for months before the party even happened. And then Jada told me the part that made me want to scream. Chris's mother had apparently told him back in February that my mom wanted them to reconnect. She'd given him my mom's number. They'd been talking directly, not just through their mothers, for 4 months. He knew about Aaron. He knew we were serious. And he came to that party thinking he actually had a chance because my mom had spent months telling him I wasn't really happy. My mom had been lying to my ex about my relationship, telling him things weren't good between me and Aaron, setting him up to believe I might leave Aaron for him if given the opportunity. I called my mom immediately. She answered sounding hopeful, like maybe I was calling to reconcile. I asked her if she'd been telling Chris that I was unhappy with Aaron. She went quiet. Then she said she may have expressed some concerns to him about whether I was making the right choice. I asked her what exactly she told him. She said she just mentioned that I seemed stressed sometimes, and that Aaron didn't seem to make me as happy as I used to be with Chris. I asked if she told him I might leave Aaron. She said not in those words, but she may have implied there was an opening. An opening. She told my ex there was an opening to get back with me. I hung up on her. I couldn't listen to any more justifications. Now I'm sitting here trying to process that my mother has been running a months-long campaign to sabotage my relationship and reunite me with my cheating ex. This wasn't just one bad decision at a party. This was premeditated. She's been working on this since before Aaron even proposed. Aaron doesn't know about this part yet. I don't know how to tell him. I don't know how he'll react when he finds out my mom has been actively trying to break us up for months. And Chris is still out there thinking he has some chance with me because my mother spent 4 months filling his head with lies. I'm so angry I can barely see straight. Final update. Okay, so this is probably my last update because honestly, I'm exhausted. And I think things have finally settled into something resembling a conclusion. I told Aaron everything. About the texts Jada showed me. About the months of planning. About my mom telling Chris there was an opening. I sat him down and just laid it all out because I was done keeping things from him, even to protect his feelings. He was quiet for a long time. Then he asked me why my mother hated him so much that she'd spend months trying to destroy our relationship. I told him it wasn't about him specifically. It was about money and status and my mom's weird obsession with the life she wished she'd had. He said that didn't make it hurt less. I told him I was done with her. Not just taking a break or setting boundaries that she'd inevitably cross again. Done. He told me he didn't want to be the reason I lost my mother. I told him he wasn't the reason. She was. She made choices for months knowing exactly what she was doing, and she didn't care how it would affect me as long as she got what she wanted. That's not a mother who loves me. That's a mother who loves her idea of what my life should look like. We talked until 3 in the morning, about our families, about what kind of wedding we actually wanted now, about whether we even wanted his parents involved anymore after they'd witnessed that disaster. He said his parents thought I was amazing and nothing my mom did would change that. I cried a little. The next day, I drove to my parents' house one last time. My dad answered the door looking tired and sad. He told me my mom was in the kitchen. I told him I was there to say something to her, and then I was leaving and I didn't know when I'd be back. He nodded like he'd been expecting this. My mom was at the kitchen table with coffee, still in her robe. She looked up when I walked in and immediately started talking, saying she was glad I came because we really needed to discuss this like adults, and she was sure we could work through it if we just communicated. I told her I wasn't there to work through anything. I was there to tell her that I knew everything. The text with Chris's mom going back to January, the 4 months of direct communication with Chris, telling him I was unhappy with Aaron, telling him there was an opening. She tried to interrupt me, but I told her I wasn't done. I told her she had deliberately tried to sabotage my relationship with a man I love because she wanted me to be with someone rich. I told her she picked my ex who cheated on me and lied to me for years over the man who has never been anything but kind to me. I told her that said more about her values than it ever could about mine. She started saying I was twisting everything, that she just wanted me to be happy and secure. I told her she wanted me to be what she considered happy and secure regardless of what I actually wanted. I asked her if she ever once considered that I was genuinely happy with Aaron. She said I might think I was happy now, but in 10 years when money got tight, I'd realize I made a mistake. I told her the only mistake I made was not cutting her off sooner. I told her I was done. I didn't want her at my wedding. I didn't want her in my life. She could keep her opinions about my choices to herself because I would no longer be available to hear them. She stood up and grabbed my arm, saying I couldn't do this, that she was my mother, that I needed her. I pulled my arm away and told her that a mother who deliberately hurts her child to get what she wants isn't someone I need in my life. My dad had been standing in the doorway. He told my mom to let me go. She turned on him, screaming that he was always taking my side, that he never supported her, that this was all his fault for not backing her up. He said he couldn't support something that was hurting his daughter. She called him a coward. I walked out while they were still arguing. Jada texted me later saying our parents had a massive fight after I left and our dad was sleeping at our uncle's house that night. I felt bad for him, but I couldn't fix that. He's an adult and he can make his own choices about whether to stay with a woman who just burned down her relationship with both her daughters. Because yeah, Jada told our mom she agreed with me. She told her what she did was selfish and cruel, and she understood why I was cutting contact. Mom apparently told Jada she was brainwashed and that someday we'd both thank her. Aaron and I spent that weekend just being together without the cloud of my mom hanging over everything. We talked about actually planning the wedding now, just something small with people who genuinely want us to be happy. His parents, Jada, a few close friends, no 50-person backyard parties, no engagement dinners where someone might announce I should marry someone else. We set a date, 7 months from now. Small ceremony, maybe 30 people at most. I got a text from Chris about a week later. He said he was sorry for how things went down, and he hoped I'd find it in my heart to forgive him someday. He said my mom had made it sound like I was having doubts about Aaron, and he genuinely thought there was a chance. He said he realized now that wasn't the case. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say to him. He made his choices knowing he was walking into my engagement party hoping to steal me from my fiancé. Whatever my mom told him, he's a grown man who could have said no. My mom has kept texting. Long messages about how much she loves me and how I'm going to regret pushing her away. Shorter messages just saying she misses me. A few angry ones accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful. My dad called once to check on me. He apologized for not doing more to stop her over the years. He said he always hoped she'd come around on her own. I told him hoping wasn't the same as doing something. He agreed. I don't know if my parents will stay together. I don't know if my mom will ever actually change, or if she'll just keep telling herself she was right until she dies. What I do know is that I'm marrying Aaron in 8 months and she won't be there, and I'm okay with that. Some people in the comments of my earlier posts said I should try therapy with her or give her another chance. And I get why that sounds reasonable. She's my mom. But she had chances. Years of chances. Every time I asked her to stop comparing Aaron to Chris. Every time I asked her to stop bringing him up. She kept doing it anyway, and then she escalated to actually trying to break us up. At some point, you have to accept that someone is telling you who they are. My mom told me loud and clear that her vision for my life matters more to her than my actual happiness, and I'm finally listening.